Hey everybody, it's Chris here with the Main Points Podcast. Today we are meeting with Caleb Jump. Caleb's been a longtime friend of mine. We've done business together, socialized together. I'm real excited for him to talk about all the involvement he's had in Decatur and what he's done to help move the community forward. So, thanks for tuning in. Hey everybody, welcome to the Main Points Podcast. Today I have a very good friend of mine, Caleb Jump, joining us. Caleb is a longtime Decaturite, and we've lifetime, and we've become very good friends throughout the years. So thanks for joining us on the Main Points Podcast today.
Anything for you, Chris.
All right. I sure do appreciate it. Here at the Main Points Podcast, we like to talk about all things Decatur. We say, as our tagline is, we like to educate, elevate, and celebrate all things Decatur. So being a lifetime resident and Decaturite, we knew you'd be a great guest for us.
Oh, yeah. Anything to promote Decatur and talk it up.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
So quick hit a little bit. What about Decatur? What do you love about Decatur? You say anything to promote Decatur. Why is that? Why do you feel so strongly about that?
At the risk of sounding cliche, right?
Sure.
I would say the people.
Yeah.
The people. And that's thinking about the fact I grew up outside of Decatur. I was 9 at Carristown.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So out in the cornfields. Mm-hmm. And so I grew up.
Did you really live in a cornfield, though, or Niantic just happens to be in the cornfield?
No, my house, we had no neighbors. We had cornfields and bean fields, right?
Okay.
Right? They
rotate. Yep.
Yeah. So in any given year, on the right and left of my house were cornfields. On the north and south, right, were bean fields, and that just swapped. But there were 4 fields that surrounded my house, no neighbors.
All right.
So, and I liked country living too, but as soon as I, graduated high school, I moved out of my parents' house and moved into Decatur, and I've been here ever since. And when I think about, why I never left, or what kept me here, I mean, it was the people, right? Like because I was here, because I built relationships here, like I never felt that draw to leave Decatur and get out and explore something else or seek something else. I was perfectly happy here and always have been.
Did you ever have opportunities? Were there ever job opportunities or promotional opportunities that came up or maybe crossed your mind?
Well, I never sought them out.
Okay.
And so I'm not saying I didn't have opportunities, but I kind of had blinders on. You know what I mean? Like so I've been in finance for 20 years. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those skills, when I talk to the kids at Millikan, what are you studying? Business. Well, why business? Well, because I can go anywhere with a business degree, right? So I'm in finance. So I'm thinking, I came up in the community banking world. It's like, if I can learn banking, I could go do banking anywhere, right? So while it wasn't like I was turning down offers,
right,
I still was building a skill set and a career where I could really go anywhere, and it was transferable. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It just never, honestly, like the thought never really crossed my mind. I was never bored in Decatur or felt like I was missing something. I was very fulfilled, always have been, and yeah.
The fulfillment, that is the exact word I was going to use, was, you found fulfillment in the people here in the community. What were some activities you got involved in? I guess you said high school, moved out of parents' house. Kind of what was your path after that?
Yeah. So I moved out of my parents' house, went to Richland Community College first because I had no clue what I wanted to do.
Sure.
No clue. So I just started taking classes, and I always make the joke that I have more credits from Richland Community College than anyone in Decatur. I was there for 4 years.
Okay.
Taking a full load of classes.
You got
every
the Richland experience then.
Yeah, and it was just because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I finished a computer networking degree first, and I thought I'm going to go into computer networking. Again, this is like 2001.
Sure.
So
super important time.
It was, right? That was kind of the boom. But then I thought, I don't want to work on computers every day. I want to be around people. So let me switch up and start getting business courses under my belt. And so I spent 4 years at Richland just taking classes and getting great grades. I think every semester I took out there was paid for. All 8 because I was always on scholarship because I always got great grades. So my point is I wasn't just wasting time there. I was taking classes and excelling, just didn't know what I wanted to do after. So I forget how we even got on the topic, but like, I guess after high school, right? So I go to Richland and I meet great friends at Richland. I mean, I still see people today that I know from my time at Richland Community
Well, you were there for 4 years. You came across a lot of people.
I came across a lot of people, right. And so after that, or during that, I also got a job at Decatur Memorial Hospital. And so I was working at DMH and meeting people there, right? And building relationships at DMH. And so I started progressing through the management ranks at DMH.
Sure.
And I was in middle level management when they paid for me to go to Milliken.
Great.
So now I'm working full time at DMH and I'm taking courses at night at Milliken.
Was that the PACE program? Was that what it was?
The PACE program.
The PACE program.
Definitely not the first cohort, but it was the early years of PACE, right? I mean, it was only one night a week and for 4 hours, right? And I know, and you were done in 18 months.
Right.
Yeah, right? 18 months. And I say that was the old version because even since then, my wife, Heather, she's gone through the PACE program.
Okay.
She got her accounting degree through Milliken's PACE program.
Oh, great.
And it was even different then. Like she was going different, multiple nights a week. And I was like, wow, the format, like, it wasn't like, because right when it first came out, it was just 18 months and you're done. It was very accelerated. And so I went through the PACE program while I was at the hospital. And it wasn't until I graduated that then I shifted and went into finance. Okay. So anyway, the course after high school was just plugging away at local colleges. And Richland was great. Milliken was great.
Sure.
And then when I got into community banking, that's where like I really grew roots in the Decatur community, right? My first banking job was at Soy Capital Bank.
Oh, yeah.
It's good old Soy, right? Doesn't get more Decatur than Soy.
And when was that? Because I think that's when we would have first met each other, probably.
Yeah, that would have been around 2007.
Okay.
Right around 2007, right? So got into the community banking deal. But it was cool because what they actually hired me to do was just a business development job, right? And so my job literally was to just kind of be the face of Soy Capital and be at all the events and see who I could meet and pull them back to do business, at the bank. And so that's where I realized, like, holy cow, there's a lot to do. Like I don't know how old I was, mid-20s though, right?
Sure.
And my job was to go to events every
night.
chamber
events.
Yeah, right. Chamber events or Corks and Forks. Oh, that was the best event.
Yeah.
And
we need that to come back.
No doubt.
Time.
And I think that was, they still did the Pro-Am out in Forsyth.
Yes.
What was that
with
called?
The golf tournament. Was it the Futures Golf Tournament it was called?
Yeah.
Yes.
And so go to that. And my point is there was just always something going on, right? Like that was the perception, and not even it was reality,
right?
Like I was like, I always have somewhere to be. There's always,
and it's your job.
It was my job, right?
Yeah.
And so it was like, usually not on Mondays and Tuesdays, so to speak, but it was like on Wednesday night, like it starts, right? There's an event on Wednesday, and then there'd be a Thursday, and then the weekends here, and so. My point of all that is there was always something to do. There was always somewhere to be, always stuff going on. And I think that we sell Decatur sometimes as a great central point, right? We're central to Bloomington and Springfield, and we're central to all the big cities.
Right.
And yet I never...
2 hours to St. Louis, 2 to Indy, 2 to Chicago.
Huge selling point, right?
Right.
And 45 minutes to bigger cities that aren't quite that big. But when I look back, like I never went to Chicago, St. Louis, Champaign. In fact, like I look back and think, man, what was I doing? Like, why didn't I ever go to Champaign? Why didn't I go? And there was just always something to do here.
Enough to do here.
Yeah, I never needed to go outside of Decatur.
That's really interesting that there's a business development role within a bank. and that the bank even realized the importance of having a young professional be involved in those charity events, those community events, those social events, and understanding that as people go through different phases of life, when you get into a point of life where you've got, little kids at home or you've got sporting events to go to, it's harder to get to those things. So the bank even recognized, hey, we need to be involved. And we need some kids in their 20s to go to these social events.
Absolutely.
And you ate it up.
Oh, I ate it up. Loved it. So it was, I just will never forget just coming into the bank. And again, it would start on Wednesdays, and there's 2 tickets on my desk. And it's like, what am I going to do tonight? Right. And so Thursday, 2 tickets. So there's always tickets to events, landing on my desk. And there was just no shortage of places to be and things to do and people to meet.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to, that's celebrating Decatur right there. And in Soy Capital Bank that is, now part of First Mid Illinois Bank. But it was a tried and true long time. I mean, they're called Soy Capital for goodness sake. Like they're the original, of the originals. But again, they understood the importance of celebrating all that Decatur has. And they were doing that by supporting those organizations, probably with a donation. They bought a table or whatever it was for that dinner or that event. But they also understood the importance of being there, too, and having representatives there.
In fact, when I left Soy Capital, I left because I was getting more into specifically mortgage lending. And at the time, Soy wasn't big into mortgage lending, right? They could do it and they would do it, but they weren't seeking new mortgage lending opportunities necessarily. And so I left and went to Regions Bank. And I was at Regions Bank for, all of 6 weeks before I realized the difference. It was like, wait a minute. So if you think about it, Regions is not a community bank. They're a big regional bank.
17, 18 different states based in the South. That's where we started crossing paths.
Bingo. Based in the South. So we're like the northern tip of their footprint.
Northern state. Yes.
And they didn't care about corks and forks. And they didn't see a need to have someone from their bank showing up at all these events, right? So it was quite the contrast to what you hit on with Soy Capital. They realized, hey, we need to be investing in these events. We need to be writing the checks. We need to be sending representation. And that was not the case at Regions. So I was not there long because it's like, holy cow, hold up.
Sure.
This isn't any fun.
Right.
And so when I left Regions, I went to Town and Country Bank, which is a little more local, right? They're still bigger, or were bigger than Soy at the time, but they were still a Central Illinois bank.
Correct. Right? Based in Springfield at that time.
Springfield, right. So sometimes you don't realize what you've got until it's gone. So once I'd left, I go, oh, wait, this almost speaks to where there are opportunities elsewhere, right? So if I get in with Regions Bank, 17 states, South, that's the way I could advance my way out into a big city, get down to Birmingham, Alabama, or go to Florida.
Even St. Louis or Nashville or.
And then I was like, hold up, they're not invested, or they don't care, or they're not investing in the Decatur community. And that was a huge, that was a miss. I was like, wait, I got to work my way back to a bank that cares about the Decatur community. So yeah, it was a little wake-up call.
That's pretty revealing, even at a young age, too. You probably didn't really even comprehend what you were feeling at that point in time, but just going, no, that's not the path I want to be. I don't want to be a banker in Nashville and get promoted to credit manager or something in a warehouse somewhere.
Yeah.
I want to go to the Corks and Forks again.
Yeah, right.
So we need to bring Corks and Forks back, by the way. Okay.
Thank you. I was hoping to throw that out there. Someone bring back Corks and Forks,
please.
And I'll help make it a thing if I have to. That was the greatest event.
Yeah.
Greatest event.
Yeah. Well, and that's just in all of those events you were going to, all of the charity dinners, all of the golf pro-ams, you were with people.
Right.
You were involved with people. You were camaraderie with people and really side by side with people. And that's what just continued to forge you really to become a fabric of what the community is.
No doubt. And right, the community is the people. And I guess on the that's what it is. Like, I can't really, there's no need to elaborate.
Right.
That's the point. Like, that's the community is the people. The people are the community.
Who are the people? Who are some people now that you look back at and go, man, that one, they believed in me. Who was it at Soy that said, you know what? I think Caleb should go to these. Who are people that kind of pushed you along the way at that time?
Yeah. So Gretchen Murphy was she's who hired me, right? And
owner of Murphy and Co. downtown now,
right? Which is so right. There's reinvesting in Decatur.
Oh, she reinvested right downtown. Yes,
right. Even when she's done with her banking career, it's opening a business downtown. And so she was definitely the biggest, I guess, advocate. That's what you want to say, hey, like, Caleb's the guy. Like, let's have him represent the bank out in the community. And so I owe a lot of that to her. That was just really cool. And then if you think about it, back then, Soy Capital owned J.L. Hubbard. Right. So then from a distance, I mean, I never had a close relationship to Kevin Brahaney, but I'm getting to see, like, Mr. Decatur. Right.
He was the model of community involved. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
And was that everything, whether it was him or his checkbook, right? Like, he was supporting everything.
And usually both. I mean, really, he was there. I mean,
right.
Yes.
And anytime you wanted to get buy-in on anything or an event or this, that, or the other, it's like, you should talk to Kevin Brahaney, right?
Brahaney.
And so I wasn't consciously observing that necessarily, but it's since come back to me, even as recently as the last year or so. I thought, man, I own I own a business in Decatur, and I'm recruiting and developing team members, and I've seen someone else do this, right? Oh, it's Kevin. And so even in the last, I want to say it was less than 2 years ago, maybe more than a year by now. Seems like it was just a week ago, but I just randomly called Kevin and hadn't talked to him since I was at Soy Capital Bank, probably. And again, we didn't have a close relationship then, but like, I've been around long enough. He knows my name and I know his clearly, right? And I just knew, like, Kevin's a giver, right? And so I want to pick his brain. I want to see how he built his business in Decatur, and asked him to coffee. And I mean, zero hesitation. Yep. Like,
absolutely.
When do you want to go? And that's really, I've modeled, probably even without knowing it, a lot of my professional career after Kevin. Just that mentality of give, like, give, invest, like,
whether it be your time
in the community, it's time. Because it's not always money, right? Like, when you're first starting out, like, you don't have money to invest.
Right. The checkbooks aren't as big.
Right.
When you're
and so a lot of times, like, organizations aren't looking, I mean, they're looking for money, but what they also don't have is volunteers, right? And the people who put in the time. And so I joined lots of boards and would help in event planning any time that I could, or just spreading the word and promoting what was going on. Again, because I saw that's what Kevin does. Right. That's what I should do. So
yeah.
And again, it was subconscious. I didn't even know that until hindsight, many years later. It's like, oh.
So subconscious was an interesting word, because you say at the time maybe you weren't thinking about that, but I know now you were very goal driven. And everything about your life, really, from your finances to your personal relationships to your spiritual relationships to your health is goal driven. Have you always been that way, or is that something that you kind of you started seeing the path and you kind of played with some goals and wow, that worked. And what if I got more strategic with it? Or how did you become so goal focused?
Yeah, I don't know that I was always goal driven, but I've always liked to compete. I've always liked to win. I've always liked to, if I'm going to do something, try to be the best at it. So like those things, I think, caused me to just be intentional about like whatever I'm doing, I'm going to try to get good at it. And so then by trying to get good at whatever I was doing, trying to get good, then I started reading a lot. So if I'm learning anything new, whether it's I'm going to decide to be healthier, so I need to read on workout plans, or I need to read up on a diet plan, or if I'm going to pick up a new hobby, golf or the guitar are my two recent hobbies that I've been learning. I better read up on that. So my point is I read a lot. And then in reading a lot, I think I just learned the importance of having goals. And how like you don't, so if I'm competitive and like to win, then it doesn't take long to realize that like most people don't win by accident. Most people don't accidentally become successful.
Show up and win the game.
Yeah. Like that just doesn't, that's not really a thing. Like you might stumble into something you become successful at, right? That was accidental, if you want to call it that. But to actually win at it and sustain it, like it takes intentionality and goal setting.
So you've also had a spirit of entrepreneurship too, and you've been involved helping other organizations, but have your own organization too as a business owner. How do your goals translate into that business, and how you've helped grow that business?
So my goals, I was talking to someone about this the other day. It really started out when I look at, so my goals always start out as like 5-year goals for me, right? Like a vision for where I want to go in 5 years, because it's really hard to, not really hard, but a lot of times we overestimate what we can do in a week.
Okay.
Right. But we underestimate what we can get done in like a year. And so to combat that, I typically will look 5 years out. And it's really broad. It's what do I want life to look like in 5 years? And from there, then I'll say, okay, if that's where I want to be in 5 years, then what do I need to do year over year? And then now I know what I need to do each year. So now in the year ahead of me, what do I need to do each month of that year to get there? And then now I know what I need to do month over month. So what I need to do in the next 4 weeks to hit my first monthly goal. And that's how I goal set. I goal set based on a 5-year vision for where I'm trying to land in 5 years. And that translates into life and business, right? Because if I say, well, in 5 years, I want to be, if I envision myself 5 years down the road. So this is an example, like if you just like picture what you want to look like 5 years down the road, like picture like how much you weigh, picture like how you're dressed, like just a picture of what.
And I've done it with
20, like what Chris
how
looks
old are
like
your
in
kids?
2029, right? And so usually when you do that, you don't imagine yourself less healthy. Right? Like you imagine a healthy picture of yourself.
Right.
And typically I'm imagining a healthy picture of myself, a well-dressed picture of myself. Right. And so it's like, man, if I'm going to look like that in 5 years, then I better not let myself gain 10 pounds each year.
Right.
Or else I'm right. Like, that's not going to work.
Trend.
Right.
I had a client or a vendor one time that told me 10 pounds for every 10 years. He gained 10 pounds for every 10 years of his life. And I remember hearing that, and that was 15 years ago. And I was like, oh, okay. Like I let that become the norm
that
for
was the
me.
deal.
Yeah. Oh, this is what happens. And but then as I flipped back and said, okay, now let's do some 5-year and 10-year visioning, another 10 pounds doesn't look good on me and doesn't look good on anybody. And it's not healthy for you.
Well, and that's the interesting thing. Like there's a point in time or a point in your life or an age. There's an age where, right, like things don't just happen automatically anymore from a health standpoint.
Right.
Right. And so my point of that is if you just imagine what Chris Harrison's going to look like in 2020, well, it's almost 2025 now. So let's say 2030.
Yep.
Even if 2030 Chris Harrison is the same exact weight and build as you are today, that won't happen without intentionality, right? Like
correct. Because of the 10 pounds from 10 years.
Exactly. Now, like, it's like, okay, I'm not really working to lose weight or this or that. I'm just working to maintain, right? And so, yeah, that's really imagining where you're at in 5 years. That's how I end up with goal setting for my business and my personal life,
sure.
my health and fitness, my family, all of that.
Health is something that I know is very important to you, and I've come to you many times before I was ready to commit to it and talked about health. Has that always been a priority for you, health? Or was it just kind of natural when you were younger and then as you got older? Or
I think it's easy to say it's natural when we're younger because we're typically involved in some type of sports, right? Like a lot of kids anyway. And so when I was involved in sports, it was natural, right?
Sure.
But even then it wasn't natural. It was just prescribed. Like,
right.
Hey, I got practice and we run at practice, right?
Exactly.
So, it was prescribed. But then I often gloss over it because I kind of just forget that when I started out at DMH, I was actually a fitness trainer. I was part of their adult weight management program.
Okay.
Put people on a liquid diet and the doctor, like they had a medical team that would do that. But we're talking about people losing, 200 pounds or 100 pounds, massive weight loss. And prior to that, they're pretty sedentary because they're just too unhealthy to be active.
Right.
So one of the things they had me do is they had me get certified as a fitness trainer. And my job was to help them start to be active and work out so they could maintain their weight loss.
Sure.
So I kind of forget about that, but like I was certified to be a fitness trainer while I was at DMH. And so, that really ingrained in me, like fitness being a cornerstone of just life in general.
Mm-hmm. And again, that wasn't natural either. That was prescribed.
Yeah.
And it ingrained in you because it's just natural. It's all you knew then.
It is, yeah. And so, so that's always been, it's always been a cornerstone of who I am, health and fitness and wellness. It's just been there. But I will also say, like, it's not always been top priority. So that's one thing that I like to tell people when they're beating themselves up. Like, priorities are often seasonal.
Sure.
Right?
Yes.
And so there's been seasons in my life where the gym or working out was like in my top 3 of priorities, right? And then there's been plenty of seasons, some of them lasting 2 years, where it just wasn't even in my top 5 priorities. Now, in the back of my mind, I knew it was important and it's a cornerstone of who I am now as a person. But I understood, like, well, right now my top priorities need to be my family, my faith, my business. And man, maybe I'll have time. Like maybe fitness will eke into the top 5, or maybe it won't. But what I knew is that eventually it would come back around. So priorities.
You just don't want that span to go too long.
Right.
And I've realized, like, businesses, you have good times and bad times in business, relationships, good times and bad times in relationships, health, good times, bad times, good days, good weeks, good years, bad years. That it does happen, but I think the key is to just keep coming back to it.
Yeah,
keep coming back to it.
Yeah. So maybe I think when I have, I guess I said it might not eke into the top 5. I would say health and fitness, like it's always in my top 5.
Yeah,
so,
you haven't gone very long. It wasn't in your top 5.
I don't leave it. I should say like wellness is always in my top 5.
Sure.
So the gym might not be in my top 5, right? Like working out, but when working out can't make it into the top 5, then I know I better focus on like at least eating clean,
Sure.
at least getting some walking in, right? So being healthy is always in my top 5. I'll put it that
Absolutely.
way.
There
The
you
gym
go.
might not always be in my top 5.
Sure. Yeah. And it takes all of it too. I mean, you can't
Right.
just do the gym alone if you're eating
Right.
burgers on the side.
Yeah.
So what would you say is your proudest achievement? I mean, you've been in business, you've been community banking, you've got a great family. Like, I mean, just, and that is hard. I heard you say, holy smokes there, but like, I mean, what's the one thing at this point you look back on and go, man, I'm really excited that got done or that I've accomplished that.
I mean, again, the risk of sounding cliche, but I don't think it is. I think my family, the fact that I've been able to maintain, and really what I'll like boil this down to like starting my business. So I've been in business for myself, right? I've had a financial planning business now for finishing up my 10th year.
Wow.
So I would say is during that season, being able to also prioritize my family, because starting a business is hard. Like, you know that. And it takes almost everything you got for most people, and a lot of times, and or at least for a season.
Right.
But when I started my business was also like the exact same time Heather and I got married.
Okay.
And so we're a blended family. And so there was no putting the business ahead of my family. Like, you don't blend a family without it being like your top priority.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it just
Right.
it's too difficult of a thing to do. And so I think just being able to build my business, but keep it in really like probably my third priority. Like my family was in my top 2. I'm not going to say if it was 1 or 2, but my faith was in my top 2. I'd probably say my faith had to be 1 because that affected the family
Sure.
in a positive way. And then my business came after that. And so a lot of times I see people, business owners who can build a great business, but at what cost?
Right.
And so I was able to build my business without putting the family on the back burner. That's probably, that is my proudest achievement. Like the family we have today, that we've grown even while building the business in its first 10 years.
And at 10 years.
Yeah.
At 10 years. And I like that you said first 10 years, because
right.
I know you got several more 10s to come after that.
Right. And typically, the first 10 are the,
absolutely.
There's some things and systems, and you're always going to have fires to put out as a business owner. But I mean, the statistics say it all. The first
Absolutely.
5, especially of any business, are critical.
Absolutely. I want to circle back to kind of wrap up here too. We started with Decatur, and obviously this is a Decatur podcast, and really appreciate you sharing some of your open up personally there, about your business and family and health and everything. I guess as you look at Decatur and look into the future of Decatur, having been here as long as you've been, being as involved as you've been, what do you see for the future of Decatur? Where do you see it going? Where do you see the greatest opportunity? And I guess where are you excited to, in your next season to really be involved in moving Decatur forward?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball, so I won't predict where I see it going, but you said greatest opportunities. So, I didn't come like into this conversation with this in mind, but as we've talked over, these last few minutes, like, I don't think I'm thinking back, right, coming up through Soy Capital and being involved. And I'm remembering, like, one of the things we didn't even talk on was like the Young Professionals Club in Decatur back in the 2005, 6,
the 501 Club.
501 Club. Yeah. I was going to see if you remember the name of it.
Yes.
Right? And so I think a great opportunity is like, either I'm just too old now, so it's actually happening and I don't know about it, or like it's just not happening anymore. And I think, and again, I'm not joking when I say that. Maybe it is happening and I just don't know about it, but also like I'm pretty in tune with what's going on in Decatur. I think there's little pockets. I do think there are some maybe small young professional clubs out there, whether they're company specific or not. But the 501 club, to my knowledge, I've not seen a broad young professionals club since then.
There were variations, and I think it was one of those things that ran its course a bit, but I agree. I think what you're saying is something like that needs to come back.
That's a huge opportunity. That's what I'm saying. And I remember I was on the board, and I remember
of the 501.
Yeah. And I
wasn't the chamber. Did the chamber
was involved? But here's what I remember. One of the conversations being is that you said what you just said. It ran its course, and I disagree with that.
Okay.
The people in the club ran their course.
Yep.
We got old.
Yep.
But there's
we have families now.
Right. But there's that's right. What should be happening is that should still be going on. That should go on into perpetuity, right?
Absolutely.
Because as we're graduating out of that, there's folks coming out of college right where we were that should be carrying the torch. And that was a huge piece of me staying in Decatur.
Right.
And probably, I mean, who knows how many others stayed in Decatur because of relationships they built there, or at least the career they were building while also being a part of that
I met
club.
my wife here.
There you
from
go.
Here.
Right.
Father-in-law's here. I mean,
we have lots of young talent in Decatur that we want to stay.
Yes.
And that's a huge opportunity.
I love that you hit on that, because that's something that just popped up on me too. Is we've got our real estate team is growing with a lot of younger people. You've got a team that's growing with younger people, and they're all looking at us to go, what do we do? And in a way, we got to be the ones putting the tickets on their desk and saying, hey, you need to go to this. Your job is to go to this event.
Right.
Your job is to go talk
good.
to them. Your job is to go have lunch. And because when I started in banking, I had a credit officer, Ray Lowry, with Regions Bank, who said, never eat alone. He said the bank will buy, which goes into my health problems too, but breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
10 pounds in 10 years.
Absolutely. Those first 10 years were, but I think that is a huge thing, and it is a huge opportunity, because there is a group of youth here that are kind of going, what do we do?
Yeah. And we did some cool stuff. I don't know. Do you remember the rooftop party that happened? I
did miss the rooftop party.
We closed down Merchant Street, and there was a party, just kind of a open house. I mean, you had Robbie's, you had Katz, you had Dell's. So there was a street party.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yes.
And we had a band at the end of Merchant Street. But then, I mean, I don't know. I mean, this was a long time ago. So maybe that ran from 6 to 10. I don't know.
Okay.
But then there were a VIP party after, from 10 to 12, up on the rooftop of that ADM parking lot. Oh. And so we closed that down too. And people who bought the extra VIP ticket got to go see another band up there.
Yeah.
In the middle of the summer. Top of
overlooking the rooftop. Who doesn't love a rooftop?
Right.
Yeah.
And it was the coolest event. And that was one of a handful that we put on while I was part of that. And that was just super cool. That was so cool.
Yeah.
And I think my takeaway is, looking back in hindsight, the city allowed that to happen because the city knew that hey, this is a young professional deal. Let's let them create something for them. You know what I mean? And so the city was very open to whatever ideas we came up with. And yes, there's red tape and this and that, but they helped us get around. They helped us plan the event.
Because they understood the importance of it.
Because they understood it's important that our young professionals have something to do.
And I even remember ADM and Caterpillar kind of had their own internal young professionals, but they even understood the importance of getting those professionals out with the bankers, the salespeople, the insurance agents, to all interact and cross-pollinate in a sense too. So that's awesome.
Huge opportunity.
I think this is probably the first episode we've had that I have a huge takeaway of like,
right.
this is something we all need to be working on.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're friends and business partners. We're going to do that, but I'll also put the call out to anybody else too. Like this is something that needs attention. It needs people to be working on together.
No doubt. We can be the advisory board until they get it up and running.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
I'll
tell
put
them
tickets on desk.
Tell them how we did it in the old days.
In the old days, how we used to do it.
But yeah, I mean, I think it'd be a huge opportunity. And that's not to say, I mean, again, there's still plenty going on in Decatur, right? Like since then, we've got the Devon and we've got so many good things, but all that's synergistic.
Organizing those efforts.
Getting those young professionals swirling around together. I mean, that's huge.
Awesome. Good. Well, good stuff, Caleb. Certainly appreciate catching up and the time and this process of this conversation to say, hey, what's a goal that we have for 25? And I think it's really to get something like that strategically going.
That'd be awesome.
So
thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in. That was a great conversation with Caleb. I really wish we would have got into it sooner, but what I loved most was how we talked about getting the next generation of business leaders involved. Him and I met, I don't want to say about 15, probably 17 years ago, and it was at social events that business leaders helped set up for us. And I believe it's time for business leaders like himself and myself and others around us to help foster those events for the young professionals in this community. So thanks again for tuning in to the Main Points Podcast.